The problem with Huan Huan, it can be a little bit difficult to get Huan Huan. Oh, I'm not sure if you have a trick, man. Even his dodge, he doesn't even sprint. This is dodge. Blood moves one step. Hey guys, MrPokke here, back with another video. And today we are going to be going through every single A rank agents in Zenless Zone Zero, their rough capabilities, their rough strength, what kind of engines, what kind of disk drives, and the overall opinions from the CN community. And this is going to be a more or less 3-part series, technically 4th part if we were to include my beginner's guide. We are going to be first going through A rank agents today. The next video is probably going to be the pooling opinion for Ellen and Zuyuan, and the final video is going to be every single S rank agent, right? So without further ado, let's get into today's content. Subscribe! Alright, first of all, before we even go on, I just want to say, I have been spending an ungodly amount of time creating Zenless Zone Zero guides, and we are almost at 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you guys have not subscribed to my content yet, if you have not heard subscribe! If you have not heard the nuclear subscribe button just now, we're almost at 100,000, and it will mean the world to me that we actually hit it with this instant additions, everything, right? So this is gonna be the fundamentals, a little bit of a background knowledge before I kind of continue. Energy cost in Zenless Zone Zero, they're being split to 40, 60, and 80. Every single unit will have the same thing. It is basically equivalent to, like, you know, in Honkai Starbucks, your energy cost is tied to your ultimate, and different units have different ultimate costs. While in Zenless Zone Zero, it's tied to your skill, or rather specifically your EX skill. So you can in fact use a skill in Zenless Zone Zero. Even if you have no energy, you can use a skill, but you usually can only use a EX skill with the right amount of energy. So namely it's 40, 60, and 80. Then the ultimate, everybody and their moms, the ultimate is going to be 3000 decimal points, and that's going to be that. Nothing else is really going to change this. Energy regeneration only affects your skill, so something a little bit. CBD 3 and version 1.0. There has been considerable changes made to the overall design and the unit kit. So for example, they have moved the mindscapes, or the cinematic mindscapes, or absolute cinema, right, from the old 6 little discs to the completely separate section, and they added on a couple of traces like basic attack, crit rate, or whatever, depending on the unit, right? So a couple of, as well as the fact that maybe we'll go through this in a separate video, but EBD 3 to 1.0 actually saw quite a couple of buffs and debuffs for different units. So let me know in the comments if you guys are interested to see me going through every single one of those changes that's occurred since EBD 3 to version 1.0. And of course, these are not leaks, right? Because we literally played them in EBD 3, so that's going to be completely fine, and that's going to be that, right? And early game for this specifically, even though I recommend you guys a couple of drive discs and all that kind of stuff, I'm not gonna be suggesting anybody to go out of their way to farm for drive discs, because it is extremely inefficient. I don't think anyone watching this video right now is going to be anywhere close to level 40. So everyone should just be focusing on raising your characters, raising your engines, and raising your overall tracers, right? Nobody should be farming for drive discs. So also, since we are all going to be having very, very poor drive disc, where we have no impact, no crit rate, attack is actually a pretty good stat. So units that can buff your attack is pretty good, because your units are not going to crit anyways, right? So getting attack early on is actually not too bad of a stat, right? And then one last point is that team building is always going to be way more important than any individual unit in Zenless Zone Zero, because team building, unlike what a lot of people on the internet are saying, alright, this game is too fucking easy, nobody matters. Team building does play a very, very significant portion, especially if you want to run a team with, for example, with days, without days, it is completely different work, right? Especially when you reach towards the end game stages. In CBD 3, I believe the last couple of boss fights, it was actually incredibly difficult, comparable to Wuthering Waves hologram difficulty. I'm not even fucking kidding. But so it is, I take it with a pinch of salt. Even though team building right now is super easy, a good team building is always going to be way more important than a unit's individual ranking, right? So that's going to be that. Then it is going to be an overall summarize kit. We're not going to do in-depth guides, and agent effectiveness will still be based on the player's usage rate, or rather the soul gun, right? The soul gun is going to be way more important, so it's not going to be a super in-depth guide. I will be making one for Ellen specifically coming in a couple of days, assuming I get enough sleep, so that's going to be there. And one last point is, of course, these guidelines, they are not rules, right? At the end of the day, a game is meant to be played, meant to be enjoyed, and the content I'm offering is to improve a player's experience through improved efficiency as they make their journey across new Eridu and Zenless Zone Zero, right? So without further ado, let's go to the first unit. It's gonna be Anby. Oh my god, the electric, oh my god, this unit is absolutely insane. This is the only A rank stun unit that we have, and it's completely free on launch. We only have 3 stun units in our entire roster of Zenless Zone Zero, being Anby, Lycaon, as well as Colada. Alright, so if you do not have any of the S rank agents, Anby is quite literally the only A rank agent that is gonna give you stun, and they are all absolutely integral to team building, especially for boss fights. I don't think I need to stress how freaking important stun units are, because if you want to do that, check out my beginner's guide on why team building, stun unit, so it is what it is. She is in fact the highest used A rank agent in both CVD3 and CVD2 in CM. Everyone and their mom, especially for players that do not have Colada or like Corin, everyone was running Anby. And even if you do, you need 2 teams anyways. The only other team that probably doesn't need a stun unit might be DOT team, the Kafka team, specifically Grace, Rina, and Anton. That is the only other team that might not need a stun because it just makes use of the shock anomaly. But other than that, every other team in this game would need a stun unit, and Anby is going to be there to provide for you. Extremely easy to use, extremely easy to understand. Pop, 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 spam a skill, spam an ultimate, all that kind of stuff. And that, okay, wait, take it back. Do not use your ultimate, do not use your ultimate, do not use your ultimate. Your ultimate should only be safe for your main DPS because everybody shares the same ultimate. So that's that. And it's just excellent for any player that's playing the game. She's completely free. And also very, very easy to build, easy to raise. Minimum investment is going to be needed for Anby because Anby, you don't really need her to deal a lot of damage. There's 2 separate multipliers, damage multiplier and daze multiplier. So unlike Honkai Starbucks, where your units have a fixed toughness bar damage, right? All your base attack do 1 bar, heals do 2 bar, ultimate do 3 bar for the most part, right? Different units in Zenless Zone Zero have different daze multipliers. So the only thing that Anby really cares about is the daze. And it's not like upgrading her kit will improve her daze multiplier by that much. Like her kit, the ceiling of her kit is already there. So she requires a lot less investments, allowing players to hyper focus all of their resources into the main DPS. Something that should look better, like especially with progress, is your main DPS will almost always be roughly 10 levels above your rest of the teammates. So main DPS, if your main DPS at level 40, then your stun should be level 30 and your support should be level 30. So something like this, right? So there's gonna be that. Very quick combos, minimal hit drag, 60 energy skills. So just an overall very, very easy to use unit. Her core dodge counter generates 7.2 energy every 5 seconds, and it does help with rotation a little bit. So just overall, basically easy to use. Everyone should use her. The GOAT, right? Ultimate, you probably would never use, but she does do a pretty decent days. Oh my god, that's gonna be there. Recommended drives and engine, you want to aim for the energy percentage and impact percentage, specifically slot number 6. I'm not gonna be going through this extremely in-depth. I did just zoom in, right? So it's gonna be swing, jazz 2-piece as well as shock, star, disco 4-piece, right? So these sets over here, they are the universal set for any daze unit. So like Kion is gonna be running this, Colada is gonna run this. Energy regen plus impact, pretty much it. And then this is gonna be a essential icon, especially if you do not have the S rank alternative, then this is gonna be essential icon, pretty much good to go. Useful Mindscape, which is basically a dupe, is gonna be dupe 1 and dupe 4, but like I said, this is not an in-depth guide, so just take it as you will, right? Then going to the overall verdict, no Colada and Nicole, you absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, you absolutely just build her because she is absolutely stun, just build her, right? If you don't have any of the S rank, you just build her. Otherwise, if you don't want to build her, you can, especially in the early game, because you can choose to focus on one team first. By the time you reach the second team, it's gonna be a couple of weeks later on anyways. So in terms of priority, if you already have a like Kaon or a Colada, then you can consider dropping Anby, right? So like that. CM is very pleased with keep considering only a 3 stun units as of 1.0, inclusive of both Ellen and Zuyuan, and they are both attack units, right? So stun units, they are very, very, very rare in Zenless Zone Zero. So if you're somebody that's not fortunate enough to get any of the stun S rank units, then she's pretty much a must race, right? Achieving daze will give you the highest burst damage. So just quickly to recap why stun is so goddamn important. It provides additional parry chances, right? The assist points, and every single time you parry this bar, it will go down, and you can only generate this bar from parrying like the daze, and then you do coordinated attacks, chain attacks. Otherwise, there's no way to generate it. So you can't even parry. So having the daze is absolutely important to give you just additional parry chances, right? Enemies also take increased damage during daze plus stun, and there's no need to reposition your team, right? The enemies stop moving, so you don't even have to dodge, all that kind of stuff. Just all in damage at this window. And also it creates chain attacks for big nuclear Oppenheimer damage. So take them there. Mobs do see a reduced need for daze, because if you guys have been playing the game, I'm sure if you guys have raised your DPS long enough, especially a lot of the arguments with the Zenless Zone Zero is a very baby game, right? You don't even need to stun the enemy, especially mobs, because most of the time before they're even stunned, they're dead because they are very low HP. But over the course of time, if you're not against mobs, if you're against boss specifically, or as the mobs get harder and harder to kill, that's when you realize having daze is going to be very important. So in the early game, I understand the reason why a lot of people just completely forsake daze and just run whatever team they want, because they don't need it. But as you go on towards the end, this thought process, it will definitely bite you right back in your bums, right? So no question asked, must build if players did not get any S rank stun, and we are gonna move on to the next unit, which is going to be, I'm gonna go through the attack agents first. So specifically Corin, Billy, and Anton. So it's gonna be stun units, attack units, then supports, all that kind of stuff. So our first ever attack unit is going to be Corin, a physical melee DPS attack stun. Incredible damage potential and hit stuns, and she's basically free from pre-registration. And attack units, generally speaking, in Zenless Zone Zero, they are very, very plentiful. So do expect a certain degree of power creep if you get any of them. Because we have Ellen, we have Zhu Yuan, and in the future we're going to probably get another S rank attack agent. And most of the time, S rank attack agents, they do tend to outperform a lot better than our A rank attack agents, unlike our support or stunners, right? So just take that into consideration. But that means that Corin is still a really, really good unit, physical element, and as of version 1.0, there are no enemies with physical rest. Crazy. For example, mech enemies, mechanical enemies, like those construction things, they are very, very resistant to fire. So if you are a soldier 11 main and you try to fight against these mechanical bosses, you'll do a lot less damage. Similar to like overall rest, how it works in Water Wave. But for physical specifics, physical is the only element in this game that does not have any rest. So you can kind of consider them as like if you guys play Pokemon, they are like the normal types. Very, very, very little enemies, they are like resistant to normal types. So physical is just an overall very, very universal class, universal element that pretty much can fit into most, if not every single situation, right? She also have incredible hit stun. I'm sure if you guys have played Corin, you guys would have noticed that her dash attack has very, very high hit stun values, especially against mobs. You always just keep staggering and staggering and staggering, and they don't even fight back because it was so easy to hit stun. So very, very comfy, especially for players that are just starting out. Do keep in mind that this will not be the case for your boss enemies, your boss, your elites, all this kind of stuff. They are definitely a lot more resistant. Think of this as if Elden Ring were to persist, right? Your mobs probably have like what, 10 poise, 12 poise, whereas your bosses, they hit the 51 poise threshold of a holy nuclear. But yeah, hopefully you guys get what I'm saying. So do not expect this amount of hit stuns when you're going up against bosses. We also may face problems against more mobile targets or more mobs that are not all over the place, because the problem with Corin, she has very little mobility, especially if you were to press a skill. She'll just stay in one spot and she just moves forward very, very slightly. Very, very slightly. And she doesn't have the mobility compared to a lot of other A rank or even S rank DPSs. So she's basically like a standing machine and the enemies just move all the place. Or if they're just very, very mobile, it can be a little bit difficult to get Corin to deal the full damage output. So keep that into consideration. And her core is basically 35% more damage to stun units, so very, very straightforward. And the ultimate has a very, very big range and a nuclear multiplied by 3,689%. So honestly, very, very decent base kit for any beginners or newcomers coming into Zenless Zone Zero. Recommended dry slash engine, you are going to be aiming for crit rate, crit damage, pen ratio, very standard DPS. Don't really need to talk about Whoop Packer. I just want to say one thing. Whoop Packer Electro. This is pretty much the universal 2-piece. Almost every single crit DPS will want to run this. And then the 4-piece is usually depending on your element, right? So if you are going to be a physical DPS, you are going to be running the 4-piece physical. Then just run the 2. Because the relic system in Wonder Waves is a 4+2, any slots. So unlike Honkai Starbucks, where you are limited with a 4-piece in Camp of Corrosions and 2-piece in Planar Ornaments, any of the 4+2 combinations in slot 1 to 6, it will work. Which makes farming for these drives in Zenless Zone Zero, it could be a little bit easier when it comes to mixing and matching. So we may have a little bit more of a freedom when it comes to regard. Right? So that's gonna be that. And then for the signature icon, it's gonna be the housekeeper, absolutely insane. So that's gonna be that, nothing much to say. So the overall verdict for Huan is gonna be if you have no Ellen, S11 or Nicole, which basically don't have any of the goddamn S rank agents that are DPS, it's gonna be a 7 out of 10. And otherwise, you pretty much don't really need to raise her that much. Because and overall CN is just a little bit more conservative for A rank agents, because both 1.0 units in our current banner, Zhu Yuan and Ellen, they're attack units. So majority of the players, okay, let's just be real. You guys are gamblers, right? Majority of gacha players in this game, they play this game to pull for the goddamn banner units, especially in the first patch. Very, very little players, if ever, gacha players, they will skip an entire patch just to pull for the next patch. And there might be a possibility that the next patch is also attack units, right? So it will take a ridiculous amount of resolve to go full, like what, 6 weeks with no pulls. So taking into the general public consensus in mind, that's why Corin's rank is going to be slightly lower, because as long as you pull for any of the S rank DPS, it doesn't even have to be Ellen or Zhu Yuan. Even if you get like Soldier 11 or Nigomata, they can be very, very good, and in fact they do perform higher in terms of damage output. So it is what it is, a little bit more conservative there. Corin specifically, she excels in scenarios where there are a lot of grouped up enemy mod, or in a team with very high days build up, to ensure that our target stays dazed. So because if you're dazed, you can let Huan use the skill, and the skill will do ridiculous damage. The full damage from her EX skill, which is when you shoot out the chainsaw and it just stays in one spot and just, it is a absolutely ridiculous 1,882% multiplier at level 10, which is equivalent to pretty much double of most units EX skills, S rank included. So her damage multiplier is absolutely insane if you can get a full thing off. But in reality, this might not be very achievable, either because the bosses just flying all over the place, or our current early game setup, our days build up is not that good because we do have access to very good drive discs to give us impact value, which increases our days build up, right? So although in paper her damage output is absolutely insane, but in practice, it might be a little bit annoying. Also, I'm not sure if you guys have tried her in a shield defense. Mobs, they tend to come from all over the place. And if you have no good way of grouping up the mobs together, it can be very difficult to get them in one spot and then let Corin deal with all of them at the same time, right? So these are the two potential limitations when you are going to be using Corin. That being said, though, she is the same faction as like Corin, which is the Victoria Housekeeper, which is our current tier 0 breaker. So they do have pretty good synergy, even if they are different elements, because the way how the bonus system works, right, the faction system, is either you're the same faction or the same attribute, you can gain the bonus, right? So honestly, not too bad because the Lycaon is absolutely insane as our tier 0 breakers. But we're going to be talking about that in our S rank portion in the future video, right? So alright, next unit, our A rank attacker is going to be Billy, right? Physical range DPS attack class, mobile and great AoE kit, which is also free on launch, right? He is basically the range counterpart to Corin in every sense of the word, right? They are both physical elements, they are both attack. For Corin, she has very high damage, but she's a little bit more stationary, right? For Billy, he does deal lower damage, but it's a lot more agile, a lot more mobile, right? A lot more flexibility when it comes to all of the dodge counters and all that kind of stuff, right? So between both Billy and Corin, I would say that Billy is a lot more beginner friendly. Think of playing Billy like playing pretty much a light bowgun in Monster Hunter World. Whereas if you were to play Corin, she's basically a great sword user because you really need like good ass fucking positioning to swing your sword, in this case her chain axe, her chainsaw, to do ludicrous amounts of damage. And if you cannot achieve those conditions, you're gonna miss all the place. That's not good. Whereas for Billy, it's not that, right? Billy can just fly all over the place. If you miss a spot, you just dodge, counter, dodge, move, and his attack chains are very, very fast. So that's gonna be the difference. Are you a light bowgun main or are you a great sword main? That's gonna be up to you. So in terms of ease of use, Billy is definitely a lot more comfortable for the beginner players in Zenless Zone Zero, right? So Billy can really position, and she does have a infinite bullet spam. I've seen this in CP3, and luckily we still have it in 1.0, where you can just crouch down, and all you have to do is hold your attack button. It might not deal the highest amount of damage, but it is an absolute brain rot way of dealing damage. You literally have to do nothing, and he will just infinitely shoot out bullets. And if you were to miss, which is how you move away, just dodge and resume again. So a very, very brain dead way. Hell yeah, brother. So that's gonna be that. That means that he overall heavily focuses on the dodge counters, especially as you unlock more and more of Billy's mindscapes, right? His dupes, if you will. So it is not meant for Billy to stay in one spot and just keep shooting. He's meant to keep moving around. But I'm just saying, if you want to play him as a turret, you definitely could. The American way, alright? Multipliers, unfortunately for Billy, they are considered in the lower end of the spectrum. In fact, one of the lowest amongst all of our A rank agents, in exchange for higher range and mobility, right? So it is what it is. You take some, you win some, right? You lose some, you win some. So that's gonna be there. And his core is gonna be a 50% ultimate damage up to twice, which is basically 100% damage uptime, 100% damage buff to his ultimate. Insane burst potential. But unfortunately, it is only tied to his ultimate. And as we know, ultimate in Zenless Zone Zero, they can take a little bit to get going. So it might not be as crazy as you guys think, right? Recommended engines is exactly the same as Corin, right? 2-piece crit rate and 4-piece fan metal for the physical damage as well, all that kind of stuff. And then the engine is going to be the starter engine, so not too much to say here. Useful dupes is going to be dupe 2 as well as dupe 6, okay? Overall rating for Billy, yeah, unfortunately, CN doesn't really like him. Not because he's a guy, but they just don't really like him because at the end of the day, your job as an attack unit is to deal a lot of damage. And Billy, unfortunately, he is one of the lowest damage dealers in Zenless Zone Zero. It is what it is. Because the way it works is, MiHoYo, they designed Billy's kit such that he does less damage, but he is very, very mobile. He is very, very agile. So you can't have both. You can't do insane damage while being mobile at the same time. Otherwise, you'll be completely broken. You trade something for something, right? So that's gonna be that, which can still be very, very good for beginners. Don't get me wrong. For me, Billy was my favorite A-rank agent in CP3. And I didn't give a damn about tier list in CP3 because there was no tier list. And I had a great time using Billy. Insane. I didn't really feel that his attack bounty was that low, especially in the early game right now, because like a lot of content creators said, everything just dies very easily. I'm pretty sure for the first 10 hours of playing the game, unless you're an absolute sweaty player, you can kill everything with relative ease, even if you're using Billy. So you won't feel this damage differential between Billy as well as the other agents, A-rank or S-rank. So some in CN refer to him as the Sun Hunter, which basically means a tricycle or the training wheels. Take that as you will, but overall I think it's fine. If you like his playstyle, or you like his high mobility, high range, and just a very, very chill way of playing the game, very, very chill. feel free to go ahead and use Billy. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that whatsoever, because at the end of the day, meta, tier list, all this kind of stuff, it really doesn't matter that much until you get to the end game, which we have no idea what it's like, because they probably might have changed some things from CD3 to version 1.0, right? So we don't know what the end game is like, but in the early game, it doesn't matter whatsoever, right? So yo, shout out to my American Bull, right? Insane. Towards the end game, Zenless Zone Zero, this is based on CD3, right? Towards the end game, Zenless Zone Zero, they have a much more heavier emphasis on parries and getting closer with the target for the ease of targeting. The need for Billy's mobility in the end game content is a lot less, because how end game works is you want to build up your days as quickly as possible. Before the enemy is dazed, you're probably running a stunner, you're running the breakup, you're running Anby, you're running Colida, you're running and the wolf guy to increase our days gauge, right? Once the enemy is dazed, then you swap in to your main DPS. So this is where the problem comes in. Because Billy he's so mobile, right? He's so agile. It doesn't matter because the target is already dazed. So he's not moving, which means that he has a lower damage output in exchange for mobility in a situation where we don't really care about his mobility, especially when it comes to endgame, because the endgame content is basically just straight up just boss fights. So because of this, Billy does unfortunately suffer a little bit towards them. But like I said, this is also based on CD3, so maybe they added some changes. Maybe they added mobs in boss fight. Who knows, right? In 1.0. So we won't know. But this is gonna be the reason why high mobility in a main DPS is really not that important. High mobility on a dazer, that's actually pretty important, because you are gonna be using on dazer before the boss gets dazed, right? So that's gonna be that. Overall, that's gonna be the overall video. No hate, but it is what it is, right? Okay, moving on to our final A rank DPS. It's going to be Anton. Now, Anton is gonna be in a very weird situation in the sense where he's like a mini Kafka, except he's crit. So the way it works is he wants to be ranked in a team with shock, namely Grace. You really want to run Anton with Grace because of his core specifically. Every 4 critical hits he does, he will trigger 45% of the original shock value. It is pretty much like Kafka's skill ultimate. You trigger whatever shock value the enemy has. That is the bread and butter of Anton. So you kind of want to really build up this shock. If you are running Anton alone without another shock applicator, it can be a little bit difficult applying shock by himself, namely because he can only apply shock during his burst mode. His burst mode is where Anton's damage really starts to skyrocket, and it's basically when you use a drill and this drill changes color, it becomes blue, then every single time you do the base attack, it's like a very long but if you don't have this drill, then it's basically just random base attacks, right? Because of this, the shock application, the anomaly application for Anton by himself is not good enough. So you kind of really run the running with Grace to see a very good damage potential. Without Grace, I would say he might even be lower than Billy. It is what it is, right? So something to put into consideration. He also prefers enemies to be weak to shock, namely machines. Anton is ridiculously good with machines, especially if you run him with Grace, right? So outside of his burst mode, so if you ran out of energy or you didn't do your chain head, whatever stuff, then Anton's damage really falls off. Think of him as like Soldier 11, but a little bit more restrictive. Because Soldier 11, she doesn't give a flying fuck about anything, right? She is her. She has a lot of trigger conditions for her to trigger into her Frenzied Flame. What is broken can be reforged, right? So she's almost quite frequently in this burst mode. Whereas for Anton, it's a lot more restrictive, and you kind of want to run him with shock, right? So that is the condition. Recommended drive and recommended engine is going to be crit damage as well as energy regeneration. You really want a little bit of energy regeneration on Anton, because otherwise his skill is just way too slow. Useful dude is going to be a dupe 1 as well as dupe 6, right? So 2 beats crit rate, 4 beats energy regeneration, and then the signature weapon is going to be a signature weapon. Keep in mind for this, shock or any anomalies in this game, they do not crit. So this is where a little bit of a problem comes in for Anton. It's like his trigger only happens on every crit, but shocks don't crit. So it's in a little bit of a very weird situation where you need to crit to trigger the shock, but the shock itself, it will never crit. Unless they make a unit in the future that can make anomaly crit in the future, but for now it's just in a little bit of a weird situation. So that is gonna be the overall rating for Anton. If you do have Grace, he performs exceptionally fucking well, especially against machines. Otherwise, it is what it is. It's a mid DPS. It is the best example of a mid DPS. CN thinks that Anton, he does have the highest theoretical damage output amongst all A rank DPS because of his synergy with Grace. But if you do not have Grace, you basically can't really apply good shock anomaly build up, because you don't give Anton anomaly build up. You don't give him anomaly proficiency because he still needs to crit, right? So it doesn't work. You kind of just need to run him with Grace. So that's gonna be that. And proper rotations are also gonna be needed for Anton to stay in the burst mode every single time he wants to deal damage. So if you don't really know what his rotations, if you have not enough energy regeneration, he's not in the burst mode, even if you have Grace, his damage is going to be a little bit lackluster, especially when he's not in specific mode. So a little bit restricted in that sense. Anton's team of Grace and Rina, which is our current best in slot, they may also suffer from a slower days build up because there's no breaker in the team. So we are going to be pretty much relying on shock to deal damage most of the time. This is not a problem, especially against machines, because shock is exceptionally well against machine enemies. Pretty much like DOT, right? You don't need a crit to do damage in DOT. You just need to apply the DOT and you can just do whatever kind of damage. But if you're against like other enemies, especially enemies that are resistant to shock, that's when shock anomaly and this entire DOT is not going to work that well, right? Take that into consideration. He's basically sort of like a member of the DOT team. Maybe like Luca, a little bit. I don't know. Take it as you will. But Grace is definitely Kafka, right? This will require the players to be a little bit more comfortable with dodging, because a DOT team in Zenless Zone Zero, since you're not going to be building a lot of days, you're not going to be able to deal a lot of parries, and you're not going to be dealing a lot of coordinated attacks, because you lack this days build up. So you're basically permanently spamming this shock anomaly, shock anomaly, shock anomaly in order to deal as much anomaly damage as possible. So it has a very, very different playstyle compared to your traditional DPS team building, right? If you're used to it, then great. If you're not used to it, then maybe you might need to get used to it if you really, really want to use Anton. And with that, we have covered every single A-rank DPS, and we are now going into our support category. First of all, being Nicole. Ether Grouper. Excellent, excellent grouping mechanic, and she is also completely free on launch. And also, speaking about Nicole, since it is gonna be our first ever support unit that we mentioned here, supports, all supports, not just Nicole, right? Nicole, Soukaku, Rina, they all have an innate mechanic of triggering this assist. Usually, under normal circumstances, assists can only occur when you get hit. Supports are the only unit in the game where after you do some special attack, like maybe for Nicole it's like a skill, most of the time the skill, right? You press the hold the skill, then you have an assist button coming up. Then you can just press assist to instantly switch in your next DPS, which is very, very comfortable when it comes to overall battle rotations, right? So it's very, very nice. There's two big reasons, right? Two big reasons why Nicole is pretty good. Reason number one is going to be her AoE grouping ability, and reason number two is going to be her defense down. So she's also, because of these two reasons, she's very, very flexible, she's very easy to use, she's easy to build, and grouping, it can be pretty beneficial, especially when it comes to shield defense. That being said, she does fall for a little bit versus single target, right? Because we know Saki grouping, it doesn't give bosses don't give a flying fuck about grouping anyways. So when I go up against single target, then this grouping will be a little bit less useful. Her core is going to be 20% defense down, lasting for 3.5 seconds as long as the field is still there. So this 3.5 seconds over here, even though it says 3.5 seconds, it technically lasts a little bit longer than that because it takes into account of the last instance of your field is up. So it's the duration of the field lasts 3.5 seconds. So it's actually a little bit longer than what players realize. So it's actually pretty good. She also has a 25% ether damage. Unfortunately, we have absolutely no ether DPS whatsoever until Zhu Yuan comes out, and it is very likely that Nicole will be Zhu Yuan's best in slot support when she releases that. But for now, nobody can maze or do 25% damage, so it is what it is. Defense down, very, very nice. So that's gonna be that. Recommended drive. Actually, one of the only units that is very, very easy to use, which is gonna be energy regeneration 4-piece. This swing chest, it is the universal. This is basically like Ego 4-piece. Every single support in the game can make use of this swing chest. Energy regeneration as well as the team-wide 15% damage increase for 12 seconds, right? So very, very nice. Unfortunately, they don't stack, so you don't need to spam them. But basically, overall, very universal set. And the 2-piece, honestly, does not matter. It doesn't really matter that much what you talk about 2-piece you want for Nicole. So as long as you have a good amount of energy regeneration substats, then she's pretty good to go, right? So a good dupe is gonna be in M1 as well as M6, and the signature weapon is always gonna be the signature weapon. So that's gonna be that. Then jump into the verdict. That is going to be, if you do not have Rina and Soukaku, which are our two support units, that's gonna be 8 out of 10. Otherwise, it's going to be a 4 out of 10. Alright, CN feels that Nicole is very similar to Billy and Anby, and surprise, they are our free units. They are an excellent beginner unit that anyone stepping into Zenless Zone Zero, they can just pick up, use, very, very easy to master, and you can just run them for almost every single team. Alright, so while Billy himself, even though he's very easy to use, he faces a lot of competition as a DPS unit, right? You have all the S rank agents, you have the future limited banners, they're all DPS units. So Billy has a little bit more of a competition, whereas the other spectrum is Anby. Anby has no competition. She's the only A rank stunner. So unless you have a S rank stunner like Corin and Coletta, you pretty much have to use Anby, right? So Nicole is kind of like the middle ground. Comparatively speaking, because of her AoE grouping and defense now, she will see a pretty decent usage in almost any team against any scenario. But unlike stun units, such as Anby, support units, they are actually a little bit more replaceable in Zenless Zone Zero. So get rid of your mentality in Honkai Starbucks where you actually have to run supports. Supports in this game, they are not must, because you can either run Anomaly, which is going to be like debuffers, or you can run defense. And currently, the only defense we have is Ben, right? The more integral role in Zenless Zone Zero is usually going to be your attack, which is your DPS, as well as your stun, which is your breaker. These two, they are absolutely integral. So this last slot, it legit depends on what kind of faction bonus you want to run, or what kind of playstyle you prefer, right? The only exception to this is if you are running a DOT team. If you're running Grace, Rina, Anton, then that is one of the only rare cases where you don't really need days that much for now, right? Maybe in the future we get more anomaly teams, but for now that's gonna be that. So that's gonna be that. It may impact her overall versatility or universal usage as a support for that. So that's going to be that. And also, our 25% ether damage buff is also completely useless until Drain comes out. And the defense down duration, even though it lasts for the field, it is still not that long because a full rotation in Zenless Zone Zero usually takes around 2 to 3 seconds. This does not change everything, right? Unless you unlock her dupes. Her M1 specifically is the one that it really increases the field duration. So that's going to be dependent on you if you can get the dupes right. And now jumping into our next A rank support, the greatest of all time, the 7-time world champion, Soukaku, Kaku. Unlike Nicole, she has a much higher eyelid ceiling, which is to say she's not easy to use. If you are a brand new player playing in Zenless Zone Zero and you have not experienced the mechanics, Soukaku is not very easy to use because her skill has multiple portions. You can either press and hold, you can press and let go, you have enhance and hunt. So it is a much more depth for Soukaku if you really want to utilize it. She also has a vortex and all that kind of stuff. So that's gonna be that. And also, she's completely free if you clear Shiyu defense floor 3, right? So one of the most complex A rank agents out of all time, right? Anby, super straightforward. All of our attack units, more or less straightforward. Nicole, definitely less straightforward compared to Soukaku, particularly with her skill usage. But Soukaku, if you take a look at her core mechanic, she has a potential 1000 attack buff for 22 seconds. Now, keep in mind, this 1000 attack buff, it is based on her own attack. So in the early game, you're not going to keep hitting this, right? It is more dependent on towards the late game when you have more and more attack, then the cap is going to be a 1000 flat attack buff. In comparison, in case you guys don't know, our current highest base attack in the game right now is Ellen at 938. So Soukaku straight up doubles her next unit's attack. Straight up doubles, which is absolutely fucking ridiculous. And this buff lasts for 22 seconds. If you unlock Soukaku's M1, it's 30 seconds. So this buff itself is one reason why she is absolutely ludicrous when it comes to support. Another reason is that it's ice. And ice, unfortunately, just says they are just built different. They have the preferential treatment. They are the golden child of Zenless Zone Zero. Ice teams, you can see, our tier 0 DPS is Ellen. Our tier 0 breaker is like Corin. And now we have a tier 0 Soukaku, which is one of the strongest buff in the entire game. So ice, unfortunately, they are the favorite element in Zenless Zone Zero, right? On top of that, they have one of, if not the best anomalies for general usage. Freeze. Unless they are the boss they are resistant to freeze, this freeze it saves so... I'm not sure if you guys have seen my stream. Freeze changes everything, especially right before you get hit, especially if you're one from dying. This random freeze from nowhere, it can save your ass so many times. On top of that, it is also the only anomaly that has 2 different portions of the anomaly build, which is first part is a freeze plus shatter, second part frostbite, increased crit damage you receive from any incoming damage, right? So ice is just built different, right? And one last point is also because Soukaku, she has very nice grouping. She has a Saki by herself. Similar to Nicole. Nicole is like long range, right? But Soukaku is like, she does have the Saki by herself. So she kind of has like everything that you would expect from support. The only downside to Soukaku is that her movement is considerably more clunky. You can kind of compare this with like Corin. She is very slow and she doesn't exactly have the best hit stun immunity. So if you are learning your skills, all that kind of stuff, you can get hit, and if it gets interrupted, you would have wasted a lot of time, right? So it is a little bit draggy, it is a little bit slow, so you definitely have to be a little bit more aware of when you are using Soukaku with your team comp, right? So recommended drive is going to be energy generation and attack percentage. You really want this attack percentage because of this skill right here, because this is based on Soukaku's personal damage, right? So unlike Nicole, which can kind of run 4-piece with anything, you really want Soukaku to get this attack percentage so that you can hit this 1000 attack buff. Yuzu Mindscape, Yuzu Dude is going to be M1 and M2, then this is going to be the signature weapon best installed this driver. So it's going to be that. And jumping into the verdict, if you don't need any anomaly / defense units, she's a must build. She is absolutely the strongest support we have. One of, if not the strongest support that we have right now in the game, aside from Rina, but we're going to talk about that later. But if you can build something else, for example, if you are okay with running a defense slot or you are waiting for a future anomaly unit, then you don't really need to build her. Because, like I mentioned, supports in this game, although they are really cool, they are not integral to the team. Most of the time, it is always going to be tied to your main DPS as well as your breaker, for the most part, right? So supports, they are not everything. That's why she's a little bit less of a must, less of a necessity compared to, like, I don't know, Run Mei. So let's do that. So CM feels that Soukaku is one of the strongest units in the game, and not because she has minimal competition, right? Not because but because of her 1000 flat attack per second, which is the strongest damage increase as of version 1.0 across any of the spots we have right now, topping even Rina's pen ratio. Because you know why? Early game, everyone and their moms have dog shit stats. It is what it is. That's why I kind of mentioned why attack is a little bit more important than crit. Everyone has dog shit stats, so having this flat attack buff, even if it's not 1000, right, it is still very impactful, especially in the early game where all of our relics, all of our weapons, all of our artifacts all of our drive discs, they're all dog shit, right? So this is very, very nice. And another reason why is just because Ellen, tier 0 DPS, like Lycaon, tier 0 bigger, and it just perfectly fits everybody together, forming the 1.0 tier 0 meta team of all time, right? Ice team is the greatest team as compared to any other mono element or whatever team we have in Zenless Zone Zero, right? That being said, like I mentioned just now, supports are not non-negotiable because a foundation of the team will still depend on DPS and what mechanics are needed to output damage. Maybe in the future, there might also be better supports, more defense down, more res pen, or any kind of other buffs that can outscale a flat attack buff. For example, when we get to like level 80 units and we have good drive discs, then maybe that flat attack buff will not be as significant. We might need more res pen, we might need more pen ratio, whatever comes. So in the future, a little bit hard to say. So Soukaku might not be future-proof exactly in the sense of word, right? So that's that. Also, she does have the overall kit when used Soukaku, it does feel very limited in mobility, and you need to get used to it. So not exactly, oh my god, this is everyone in the mouth. Oh my god, you need to get used to this. And keep in mind that she might not exactly be future-proof, right? So to take that into consideration, unless you have an M2, which is crazy, right? Okay, now moving on to our technically final unit that we have in CB3, because the next two units, Lucy and Piper, they're brand new. So I didn't really talk about them that much, right? So I don't want to give you guys misinformation. But Ben is gonna be our final unit in the A-rank agents. D-Wall, defense, Blood is built like a goddamn tank. The only defense unit in the entire game, and everybody gets him for free when you reach chapter 2 of the story, right? His skill has no cooldown. Actually, fuck, man. He theoretically could infinitely block. So he is a very comfortable unit they can run, especially if you're facing survival issues with your team, right? He is the only defense in our team. We don't really have a way to benchmark him because there is no benchmark, right? He is the only defense unit, and right now we don't really have a way to really fully utilize how defense unit as a whole works. Majority of the time, you are going to be sticking to the usual parry, dodges, and then just slowing more DPS, all that kind of stuff. So defense is still a little bit of an untapped territory, so can't say, it is what it is. He actually deal a surprising amount of damage because he has this unique ore which converts defense to attack at 40%. He's kind of like Dr. Mundo. Blood has built-in attack percentage scaling from defense, so it's actually pretty decent. His block counter slash follow-up, especially the follow-up, has a 5,503% multiplier. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the highest multiplier in the entire game. 5,503 at level 10. For benchmark, most units ultimate, the decibel, is roughly 3,500-ish to 4,000% multiplier. Motherfucker has a 5,500 multiplier on a goddamn follow-up attack. That means that you can't really trigger this that often, but it potentially has a ridiculously high damage, right? And also, he is our only agent that has a special interaction with another agent, which is Coleda. So it does open the door for future potential combos. Maybe we get an Ellen interaction or like Lycaon interaction or whatever kind of interaction. So this is the only unit right now that we have that has this special interaction, new movesets, new ultimate interaction, all that kind of stuff, right? So recommended drive this is going to be aiming for energy regeneration as well as defense percentage. You can either aim for 4-piece defense, 2-piece energy, or 2-piece energy and 4-piece defense. That's going to be up to you, up to your preference. And then useful dupes is going to be M2 and M4, big cylinder weapon, like that. So the overall verdict for Ben is going to be this. Coleda owners, you might as well just build Ben because he makes Coleda, especially if you are deciding to play Coleda, he makes the playing experience of Coleda feel very nice. I'm going to be explaining a little bit why specifically when it comes to Coleda, but TLDR, Ben and Coleda doesn't really change the damage that much. The damage multiplier doesn't increase that much. The main reason why you want to run Ben and Coleda is because with this, your Coleda's basic attacks becomes fists. She has a lot of invincibility iframes in the base attack, and this will make your Coleda play experience a lot smoother if you pair with Ben. Not from a damage perspective, but just from overall comfort perspective. So if you are going to be playing Coleda, you might as well just build Ben, right? Otherwise, 5 out of 10, depends on what you want. Sam feels that Ben has two potential ways of playing. One being a traditional tank, you can block damage overall, increase the team survivability. Another possible way that could be possible is setting up Ben as a main DPS using his absolutely redonkulous EX special follow-up attack with a whopping 5,500 multiplier and that. More testing will be required because unfortunately not a lot of CM players actually play with Ben that much, but it is a potential thing. So if you guys know, if you guys are any Ben bros, yo, Guava certified, I'm calling out. If you guys can make a main DPS Ben build, I'll be looking forward to see that shit, right? Because this thing needs to be, it's an untapped area, it's unexplored, it's uncharted waters, right? So I'll be looking forward to see if we have any 5,500, right? Ben bros, rise up. Let me know, all right? Let me know in the comment. Ben himself, unfortunately, it is a very clunky unit. I'm not sure if you guys play Ben. Even his dodge, he doesn't even sprint. This is dodge. Blood moves one step. because it's so big. So he is very, very limited in mobility, even in dojo. So a very different school of thought will be needed to fully utilize Ben and make use of him, right? And the unique interaction instead of Koleda also makes for excellent team with Soldier 11 as the main DPS. So Soldier 11, Ben, Koleda already forms a pretty decent fight team, right? So that's that. And now we are gonna move on to our final two units, which is going to be Lucy and Piper. I will give them a combined verdict towards the end, but just know that for Lucy and Piper specifically, these two units, they have not been tested in CBD3. So 1.0 is the first time ever we are taking a look at Lucy and Piper. So take everything here with a grain of salt. We need further testings. This is just the overall, quote-unquote, the first impressions, right, for both Lucy and Piper. So we're gonna talk about Piper. She is our assault DOT, basically bleed DOT, if you want to compare this Honkai stuff. But she has absolutely insane assault build-up, especially with the master. She's the spin, the kuru, the master slash nuclear assault build-up, one of the highest assault build-up in the entire game. Also, on top of the assault build-up, she has daze and she has buffs tied to her power, tied to the kit. So her main purpose is to build up assault anomaly. And keep in mind, like I mentioned in shock, anomalies they cannot crit. So she is a true DOT unit. Technically not DOT, anomaly unit. They are not exactly damage over time, but technically they are a little bit. Just think on her. It's not really a Luca as well. Is it Luca? Oh yeah, no. Basically assault DOT, right? That's gonna be there. EX skill is gonna be a bread and butter to have absolutely insane assault build up as well as the power build up for 18% team-wide damage buff. She also has 40% damage reduction and anti reduction during the spin, but it is not immune to big hits, especially for your bosses. If they're doing the very big finishing moves, she can still get interrupted. So keep that into consideration. Recommended drive and engine is gonna be aiming for anomaly proficiency and mastery. Like I mentioned, anomalies they do not crit, right? So these are gonna be definitely your best slot. For any anomaly units, these are gonna be your best slot. Useful Mindscape, M1, M2, that's gonna be that. Energy regeneration, proficiency, 4-piece, freedom boost, that's it. As well as the Ginger Weapon rolling type, right? And then moving on to Lucy, I'll combine both of them, but Lucy is gonna be basically a Tobes. She is quite literally Tobes. She summons pigs or guard boars. Also a support, but the difference is for Lucy, the guard boars, they are like permanent summons that stays on the field the entire time, even when you switch out of Lucy, and they deal damage by themselves, right? So this is gonna be our first ever summon agent. She is not like Rina, right? Rina uses the puppets to attack. Lucy straight up just leaves this summon there, even when you swap out of Lucy. So this is gonna be very interesting. All right, permanent on-field damage dealing constant damage. The pigs themselves, they're also based on Lucy's own crit rate slash crit damage. So there may be a potential to see some absolute insane pig damage. But unfortunately, because we just got Lucy, we didn't turn in CBD3, we are not exactly sure how much damage these boards can deal to the enemy, right? So we need a little bit more time to test out Lucy. The skill also provides a 600 attack buff for 10/15 seconds to our entire fucking team. For Soukaku, it is up to 1000 for next unit. So Lucy is 600 attack buff to the entire team. Lower duration, lower attack buff, but it's to the entire team. Right? So take it as you will. Our team also has a team-wide 10 energy regeneration, and the next unit has a 30 energy regeneration. Since most units in Zenless Zone Zero, they have an energy cost of 40 to 80, 40, 60, 80. This actually can be quite useful, but the trade-off is you can only use one ultimate. So if you do use Lucy's ultimate, then you can't use the main diva's ultimate. So this is gonna be leaving up to you guys for further testing. She's the only unit in the game that we have that has an energy regeneration ultimate, right? So use recommended drive that aim for energy regeneration as crit rate, because we do want our boards to deal damage. So crit rate slash crit damage. So she's kind of like a DPS slash support hybrid. Jade, I don't know, 2-piece crit rate, 4-piece energy regeneration, because she still is a buffer, right? Then this is going to be the signature weapon, Kaboom, the cannon. Useful dupe at M2 and M6. And overall verdict for both Piper and Lucy to be tested. So no verdict to be tested, right? We don't really want to give any insane nuclear expectations. Not too weak, not too. We still need more testings, especially at the end game setup slash stats, right? Anyone saying that Lucy is dog shit or Piper is dog shit right now, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, because it's the early game. No one fucking knows what they're gonna perform in the end game. No one even gave them a problem. It's like raiding a unit without relics. It doesn't make sense, right? So no one knows yet, or we are gonna wait for further testings. But based on first impressions, Piper lacks a proper anomaly team. We don't really have a good anomaly team aside from Grace and Anton, and that's for shock, right? So she doesn't really have a dedicated support or setup that she can make use of effectively. Whereas Lucy, she can see a pretty decent spot with Soldier 11 as a fire support, as a dedicated support slash sub DPS. And keep in mind, Soldier 11, she is the only unit in her entire faction. There are no other factions with Soldier 11, right? So Lucy being up with Soldier 11 allows us to trigger the passive, which can be very good. And now you don't run Ben as a third slot. You could run like another breaker, right? So that's gonna be a consideration. Feel free to explore and test out Piper and Lucy if you see the kit interests you, since they are very unique from the rest of A rank agents. And even S rank wise, they also have a very unique kit, right? With Piper being the only assault anomaly stacker and Lucy being the only summoner with a pet DPS system, right? And with that, we have finally come to the end of our first series featuring every single A rank agents in Zenless Zone Zero. Stay tuned for our next episode where we're going to go through every single as ranked agent, as well as pooling opinions for Alan and Julian. This has been an absolute blast. I have not slept. Fuck sleep. Hearts in the chat for a streamer. Hearts in the chat for a YouTuber. Absolutely insane. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this content. I really put a lot of effort into this. Alright, if you like, enjoy this, leave a comment down below or join the Discord. Discord.gg for Pokke video. All the best for your Alan boost. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.